Hey all, welcome to Motivation Monday. So last week we tackled courage, and this week we are on to leadership competencies and kind of talking about an overall framework when you're looking at your development. So we are making leadership development way too complicated. If you look at all the research out there, leaders have a lot to do. And once you become in charge of other people's careers and other people's work, there is a lot to do. However, I think the models that are going on out there and some of the things that are being, frameworks that are being put out there are just overly complicated and lots of fluff. I've seen some with all these weird definitions of competency. So this week we're breaking it down to the simple. It's all about leadership competence. So maybe you're out there and you're not 100% sure which competencies you should be focused on. And because everything's so confusing, you don't even know if you're looking at the right model. And then you're faced with the challenge of organizations will take a particular competency and change the definition to suit. In my experience, that happens often. Or maybe you're only getting feedback once a year with your performance review. I get it. A lot of organizations don't have a clear framework, or they've altered definitions that are far different than what a standard competency definition looks like. Maybe your leader's not giving you feedback, or the feedback you've gotten you don't quite understand, or maybe you're not sure how to self-assess and get quantifiable feedback on these competencies. And if you do have all this great feedback in front of you, maybe you're not sure how to develop it. So you've got the framework, you've got the feedback, but you're not sure what to do to close those competency gaps. I get it. So this week is all about creating a clear, researched, valid framework for leadership development, having clear definitions on what it means, and then all the tools and tips you need to pick the 2 to 3 that should be on your development plan so that you can do the real work. The real work is about, oh my gosh, how do I develop competence in these areas? So I want to share with you 3 tips, Motivation Monday, on this. So first I want to just talk a little bit about what you see behind you. I've broken out, based on the research, based on a number of different models, based on the simplicity of what leaders need to do. It is not hugely different than what they've needed to do for a long time. So I have to go on a little bit of a soapbox here. Leadership did not change because of COVID-19. I'm seeing all this, leading through COVID-19 or leading post-COVID-19 or how leaders need to evolve because of COVID-19. And I got to call BS on that. Leaders need to do the exact same things that they needed to do pre-COVID-19. But I think if you look at this framework, in a lot of cases, organizations found the leaders that they had were missing some of these key competencies. And we can talk about that throughout this week. But leadership is no different right now than it was 6 to 12 months ago. It's evolving. I think there's a couple things on there you might see that are becoming more critically important because of a global pandemic, but this is leadership. You need to be able to manage yourself. You need to be able to manage others, which is that leadership column, and you need to be able to manage business outcomes. This is no different, and it's not rocket science. So leadership 1000% is about these competencies. I have a few faves on there that I think are foundational and fundamental, courage being one of them. We talked about that last week. But truly, at the base, leadership is all about performance. Once you're in charge of other people's employment, your sole job is moving a group of people towards performance outcomes that matter for the organization. That's it. It's no different than in sports. A coach has to get a certain number of players formed in roles executing to score. That's it. And that's what leaders do. So I've broken this down. It's all about performance. You have to understand these 3 elements. So you have to go inward first. So a lot of people want to go over to, I need better financial acumen because it's safe. That's numbers. And they skip having to start in the individual section. If you don't bring that personal credibility, which is about IQ, which is about trustworthiness, like you've got to be trusted as someone who is smart enough and capable enough to do the work. That personal credibility comes from a group of things like integrity, your character, your smarts, like what you're bringing to the table. The emotional intelligence, hugely important. And that's pretty complex competency. So we're going to actually dedicate a week on emotional intelligence here coming up in June. You've got to have resilience. You've got to have adaptability, you've got to have humility, and you've got to have courage. And these are all things inside of us. So if you look at that list, you have to know the elements, the 2 to 3. If you look at that list, I'm sure everyone can pick one that they should be working on. The second is the leadership column. So this is about people. Now, all of a sudden, you're working in groups. So you've got to have political savvy. You've got to understand how to navigate and influence in an organization. You've got to work well with others. That's collaboration. Collaboration doesn't mean you like everyone and everyone fakes niceness. Collaboration is about being able to work with a group of people to achieve an outcome. You have to communicate. You got to understand team development, which means you have to understand, like a coach, how to identify talent, how to develop talent, how to mobilize talent, how to apply talent to the work, and how to monitor talent performance. You have to understand how to make decisions, and you've got to be willing to execute, which is a whole competency around setting objectives and measuring and being accountable. And then lastly, on the business side, financial acumen. You have to know how your business makes money. And it doesn't matter if you're in IT or HR or wherever you're at. How does the business make money? And are you making money? And what's your role in helping make money? You have to be strategic. And this is a huge one for people. They say, I'm really strategic. And then you look at their work and it's completely tactical and status quo. So you also have to understand customer success. So great business competence means when you're a leader, you understand service delivery, service outcomes, service satisfaction, and service sustainment for your customers. You have to understand design thinking. So design thinking is about being able to come in, redesign a process, optimize it. So optimize it doesn't mean you write it down on a Visio chart and document it. Optimize it means you reduce time, money, or headcount it takes to do the work. So that design thinking is critical for efficiency and scalability. And lots of organizations fall short on that, or they hire consultants to come in and write process down, but they're not really design thinking and challenging that status quo and automating and integrating. You also have to have enterprise change. And this is where I say leaders are no different now than they were with COVID. You have to be able to lead change, which means you have to be open to the change. You have to be communicating the change. You have to understand the change. You have to understand the impact of change, and you've got to move people through it. So great leaders have enterprise change capability. And lastly, data science. So with all of the artificial intelligence and data science and predictive analytics, great leaders use data and data science to make good business decisions. So this simple leadership framework, I would say your second tip after it's all about performance first, leaders are all about driving performance. Second, it's understanding that you have to work on yourself. You have to understand how you interact in a group of people, and you have to understand the basics of driving business profitability. So the third tip would be using this framework, which has been validated and researched, and I don't think you could pull a model that wouldn't have something in this area. It might be called something different, and that's the problem. It's so vague and cloudy out there. Somebody calls something fluffy with great icons and funny pictures because people seem to respond to that. But these are basic competencies defined the hard way. So don't try to alter these definitions. This is it. So pick, your third tip is pick one from each, and that's a great place to start. And we'll talk more this week about leadership competence and how do I create the most effective development plan. In the meantime, feel free to download this free white paper, which gives more detail on these competence, the leadership competence framework and competencies, and also what it really takes to be an effective leader. And then also some information on an upcoming webinar. You don't want to miss it. If you're liking these videos and you agree that development success comes from understanding where you're at today and where you need to be, you do not want to miss this webinar, because I will take you through a simple process and steps to take these and put them into action and start to validate your development gaps and create an effective development plan that will actually work and start to close your competency gaps. So again, thank you so much for all of you that have been tuning in. This week is all about leadership competence. And don't forget, leadership is all about performance. You need to understand the individual leadership and business competencies. And most of all, pick one, at least pick one out of each of these as a priority that you know you need to start working on today. So tune in tomorrow where we will talk about Tuesday tips on leadership competency. Thanks all.